Mahe and I favor nothing, miss nothing, broken nothing, absent from your lives that are needed. This is a little esoteric, and we're going to bring you a little perspective. And if I said a little esoteric, then you know who is on the line with me.
Hey, no, brother. Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Well, folks, we have been talking about something, and we decided that we better start recording because we've already been talking for an hour.
Yeah,
Um,
and we already went over a couple subjects that we said, hey, we should record this. So we're
yes, well,
going to.
folks, we could give you a 4 hour show if we just recorded us talking. So we were talking about perspective, and I'll start with this. Back in the day when I was on a short track, we would do somewhere between 90 and 115 mile an hour. All right. But when you're on that track with the cars that we were in, everybody in the stands is sitting still. So when we go by, everybody sees us fly by. And those of us who were on the track are all moving, well, except for the guys who are going slow. We're all moving at high speed. So if you're in like the top three and you're lapping people, you three are synced up and you will work together. You will watch these cars. They will go in and out of traffic together. They will go down and up together. Everything is in a rhythm. And
Yep.
the whole time you're doing it, your foot is going, because that's how fast you're hitting them corners.
Yep.
Everything is through your hands and your eyes, but when you're on the track, everybody is going the same speed. So your perspective is that everything is normal, while everybody sitting still in the stands is like, "Holy crap! Look how fast they're going." Um,
Yep.
and that's a really good example of a change in perspective from
Yeah.
a viewer on the outside to somebody who is on the inside.
Yes. It's perspective on a perspective, right?
Mhm.
So to speak. Because, yeah, and we were talking about that too, because, you know, looking at the ant hill from the inside versus being on the outside. Same thing with meditation. When I do meditation, okay, I have built a room somewhere that sometimes I will sit and meditate in. Not That's different than the physical room that I'm in, if that can make sense. In my
Mhm.
mind, I built this room, and in my mind, I sit in that room. Now, there are times that in meditation, I just sit out in space and look back. Same thing. That's the same as the perspective of the ant farm, right? I constantly am the guy that's not in the ant farm. I'm looking at it through the glass, watching everybody run through all their little tunnels and doing whatever, because it's all a matter of perspective how you choose to view it. And we were even talking about that in the last podcast. We were talking about energy connections and sex and intimacy, right? We were talking about that before we hit the record button, because that's all a matter of perspective too. Because the big question I've been asking people is, what to you is intimacy? Because to me, Raven and I are intimate on a daily level, but we've never even physically met. See, a lot of people will put intimacy as part of a physicality, which,
Mhm.
yes, it can be. I'm not saying it's not, but intimacy is really, we talk all the time about how in our personal conversations off the air, we will discuss things that we'll probably never discuss
On the
on
air.
the air because, because that's the intimate part of our lives together, even though we're 1,200 miles apart and have never even met. We're still
Yes.
intimate on a level, and all intimacy really is just the truth. Most, and I don't care how I've seen the closest couples in the world, right? People that you thought would handle the next 40 years together just because of how they are with each other. But even those same people kept their own little dark secrets from one another, because
Yep.
that's how we're programmed to believe. Oh, it's just a little white lie. It's just no. Everything is what it is. If you choose to hold it back, then you're not being intimate.
That's true. And the other aspect of it is too is one little lie of omission or one little white lie is a huge thing because
Hmm.
first of all, it creates, whether people like it or not, it's instant karma.
Yes, that's the
Um,
biggest part of it right there. That's the biggest reason I always tell the truth is because of the karma attached to it. Because I
well,
know
and
the consequences.
the other problem that you have is it creates a barrier. So
Hmm.
if you have a relationship, I don't care if it's long, short, or just starting. If you create a barrier right off the bat, well, that barrier is just going to keep getting larger and larger as the relationship goes on, and it doesn't matter if it's like you and I who have never physically met, or if it's somebody who have been together, physically.
Yeah.
Um, once that barrier is there, it's there.
Because
Um,
yeah, because even if it's a small barrier, if it's just left unattended, it'll grow like a garden out of control. You may never broach that subject again, but because it wasn't handled in the you may start your relationship off on a little white lie, and if you've never handled that little white lie, by the time you've been together 10 years, it's not a little white lie. You've never brought it up again, but it's still growing in the background
hmm
and getting
well,
bigger. It'll always get bigger.
Kansas Lift Overture, the album, they did that song, "The Wall." You build a wall. I can't get through to the other side.
Oh yes, yes, yes,
As a matter of fact, I think that's the name of the song, y'all. "The Wall," Kansas.
yes.
One of my favorite bands. But my thing about it is like so many people think about intimacy differently. Like a lot of people, like you said, when we were talking, you all, a lot of people will say, "Well, intimacy is sex." Well, it can be.
Can be.
You
It can be
but you can
very
have sex.
intimate.
You can have sex with zero intimacy.
Yes. Yep.
It's the same with a conversation. You can have a conversation with zero intimacy. How's the weather?
Exactly.
you know,
That's
or did you see the news today? That's completely absence of intimacy, and I'm not saying that you should strive to be intimate with everybody because there are people out there who will take that intimacy and use it as a weapon against you. What I'm
no,
trying to
there's only
emphasize is,
actually in your little world, let's say, and we'll just say mine, because we can only speak from ourselves, right? In my little world, I'm only intimate, quite honestly, with about four people.
yeah, yeah,
That's you, Maverick, Butterfly, and Maisie, my dog.
yeah. And by the way, in
Um,
case they hear us, shout out to Maverick and Butterfly. I love them dearly.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I was talking to him today, and he had to put her on the phone briefly so he could go out and cut some wood because it's getting chilly out in your neck of the woods, and he needed some more
Mhm.
wood for the fire. But
But
yeah,
anyway,
they're all right, and see, and that's another couple that understands things like intimacy and sex versus attraction, or all these other subjects that we kind of talk about here and there. Because what I'm finding really odd about this particular time that we're in, I don't know if you're noticing this or not. Um, Ever since the Mike Tyson fight, okay, so symbolically to me that meant one thing, right? Um, I can't see the play anymore. It's not that I can't see it. It's just that the stuff that I see in the play is just a rehashing of the same old stuff.
yes.
It's just in a different, like, okay, so in podcasts we've talked before about the three windows of time, and some events may happen 9 times depending if it's coming and going or whatever, right? But again, the B-52 bombers came into the news, right? Because we took like 6 of them, imagine that, the number 6, and
hmm
parked them somewhere. I don't even know where we parked them, because I've got such a disinterest in the play right now, because I'm not seeing it like I was seeing before, as far as the script, lining up the script, right? I see the play every day, but I don't have a script no more to line it up to.
Me about it, and I don't know if this will make sense to you, but what's bothering me about it is we talked about live, die, and repeat, and we talked about Groundhog Day. It almost seems
Yeah.
like thing is on a loop at the moment. I don't know if it's in a
I,
holding
I think
pattern or
I think they are. I think okay. So in the last podcast, we talked about the length of the time between windows, right?
Yeah.
Is okay. And so if you have like the arm of a triangle, I think is exactly how we brought it up. Okay, if you're standing at the point, the apex at one end, the top of the triangle, and you come straight down and you're on that runner down there, you're as far apart as you can be. But as you move
Yeah.
towards that common point, you're getting closer and closer. And I think there are three distinct timelines involved here. That's why we have three windows. That's why we have Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, right? That's why
Mhm.
we have the United States, the French, and the English. You brought that up actually in the last podcast with the firing of the missiles, right? So I think we are working on three distinct timelines that have very similar occurrences because these guys aren't creative.
No,
What worked over here is going to work over here, and they don't change from their game plan. So
I
all
don't think
these
they can.
loops, huh?
I think they can change. They have no creativity. They have no imagination. So they just keep trying the same thing over and over again.
Right. Well, so to speak. It appears
Yeah.
that way. It appears
Yeah.
that way because that's the way the timeline is looping. It just appears that way. Their problem, and again, this is something that Maverick and I were just. It's amazing the synchronicities between your conversations and my conversations with Maverick because we were just talking about this, and it's something that we've brought up in the past about how the prisoners are running the prison, right? Um, so from the perspective we have or what we're told, right, is that
Hmm.
they're the ones with the fame and the fortune and all the money and the glamour and the hot women and whatever. They've got the life. No, actually it's the inversion of that. We talk about the inversion here all the time. They're the ones that are programmed since children to play a particular role. They are the prisoners.
Hmm.
So so they have to do what they have to do. So, and they have to follow the script. The only problem is I don't know the script anymore from this point. So it's kind of like, up until then I could say, okay, look, it's the return of this is happening again. The return of that is happening again. Okay, so yeah, it's the same. But now, and like you said, they're just looping so fast. I think that's just because as they collapse onto each other, get closer together, however that is working out, it's just bam, 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 right? And then and it seems like it goes that way for a minute, right? It's like bam, bam, bam. Certain events will take place pretty much rapid fire, and then we'll go through like this pause. So I
Hmm.
think I think that's the pause between the window frames.
Well, the funny thing with me is like since Trump's election, the media has been saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. You see the same posts on Twitter over and over and over again. It might
Yes,
be a little bit different location or a different name, but it's the same. It's the
yes.
same speech
It's the same. It's
as it
the
was.
same news cycle as from last week.
Hmm.
It's just in a
It's not
different
changing.
location.
It's not changing. It's just so and so did this. Well, okay, so and so did that a month ago somewhere else. So and so did. Um, it's. It, and I understand that people say the media's job is to create fear and anxiety in people and feed on it and help others feed on it, to
Right,
manipulate people. I understand this, but when they keep saying the same thing over and
right.
over and over again, and I can go all the way back to Reagan's day, dude. One of Reagan's slogans was "It's time to make America great again."
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
even larger loop.
Well, the funny thing about it is, from my perspective, this is just me, right?
Well, and think about Reagan in Russia.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're right back. Now that's a 40-year loop.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it was a 70-year loop between JFK and Trump,
Yeah.
right? So we went from a 70-year window to a 40-year window to probably a 20-year window to a 10. Because, okay, so again, from my perspective, we're dealing with half-lives of radiation, right? That's the toroidal field, the Van Allen belt, whatever the hell you want to call it, that supposedly goes around the Earth, right?
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So as the radiation is half-lifing itself to death, so to speak, the
Mm-hmm.
timeline's doing the same thing. Because at some point it's gonna reach the end, and that's when we're gonna have the big flip, right? I mean, that's just the way
Yeah.
I see it.
You remember how Max Headroom used to talk? You remember that?
Yes, yes,
That's what I'm seeing when I look at stuff now. It's like, really?
yes. Well, and we were talking about this the other day. I don't think we've ever discussed this on a podcast, but in the text message or maybe even on the phone call we had. Um, I can watch a program, and because my service is so bad, I'm used to seeing the buffer wheel, right?
Hmm.
Well, it's getting to the point now where I can watch a program and the buffer wheel will kick in like I expect it to because my service sucks, but it's not the service. I think it's glitching across the board because usually when you're watching a streaming platform, let's say like Pluto
Hmm.
TV, right? Okay, that's a type of streaming. It's live, let's say. Well, when you go into buffer mode, when it's buffering, you lose all that part of the stream.
Yeah.
When it kicks in, you've already lost. But what I'm noticing is that I'm not losing any part of the stream. The buffer wheel's kicking in, and when it picks back up, it's picking right back up where it's supposed to.
Well,
So
you and I talked about this before too. You and I are buffering, and people are like, "What?" Now let me try to explain this, and you're going to go, "Oh my God!" But we're buffering because what happens with me is like
mm,
I'm at work. Very good example is last night. Last night I was way behind all the way to dinner time. Okay.
yep,
And because folks, any of you who have a job, you know where you should be. I don't care if you're a forklift driver or a machine operator, you know where you're supposed to be when you come to break. I should have this much done. Well, that's the
yep,
same with my job. I know I should have this much done in order to make sure that I can get everything done for the night. Man, first break, I'm like, holy crap, folks, I was at first break 2 hours, 3 hours behind minimum with all the extra stuff that I had to take care of. At lunchtime, not only was I caught up and ahead, but I was able to do an extra huge job that normally I can't get done under those circumstances. And by the end of the night, you would have thought that I had been on high speed, 2x, 4x. Um,
right,
and for me, it just slipped through. It
yeah,
wasn't anything that I did. It wasn't anything I thought about. It was just, this is where I'm at. I realized that I was running behind, but I didn't really, I didn't go out of my way to speed up because I understand how this is working. The first
right,
couple of hours, I was interacting with people the whole time. Now, this is where it gets catchy, y'all. The first couple of hours, I was continuously interacting with people because of circumstances. So
right,
everything slowed down for me. But
yes,
after that, everybody left the facility, and I only had a couple of people that I might bump into. But for the most part, I didn't even see them the rest of the night, other than once when I went past them doing the big job that I was taking care of. And
right,
that slowed things down again. But the thing I'm trying to get at is my interaction with everybody else is the reason why I was having such a slow wave at the beginning.
yes.
But after those interactions were over, I went right back into my high speed mode, completely outside of their perspective.
Well, I think that gets back because I've noticed that same. So as Maverick, like I said, the synchronicities of our conversations right now are just, dude, they're through the roof. Okay, because again, we talked about this in the last podcast. If you so when you jump into a window frame of time,
Hmm.
okay, so that time has those people living in it, and it has us, the time travelers, which we're all time traveling. It's not just us, but
No,
it, there I have picked up on there is a distinct difference between the different ranges of time travelers and the people involved, period. I think
Mhm.
I haven't put my finger on that one yet, but so you can interact with the people of this time, which is just how I view everybody. Those are the ones that, in my opinion, don't know any better. See, because some of this too, if we go back to the Bible, let's say, and they talk about Christ, right? Jesus Christ. Okay, so Christ to me is nothing more than consciousness. So when we were talking about being destroyed fractally, right? And
Mhm.
you get that inward implosion, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's the same Fibonacci cycle as the explosion, right?
Mm.
Um, which could also have to do with our size
True.
being microscopic, right? So if you look at everything as energy, frequency, and vibration, including, because how many times have we said thoughts are things, right?
Yeah.
There is an energy. People don't want to believe this, but that's part of the problem, I think, is there is a different there's a definite energy attached to thoughts.
Yes.
It's how we back them up and yada yada yada. So because even going back to the 13-year-old Russian kid, he understood that everybody's thought can create a different reality, right? So, your thoughts are things and they are energy. So if the energy itself, if everything that made everything up got fractalized, that would also include our thought energy. So the trip going backwards through time is actually regrowing. That's why it's called the second coming of Christ. It's the second coming. It's the return of consciousness. You see what I'm saying? So
Well, and
in this so in
you
this
could apply.
reality, huh?
I said you could apply the yuga to that, the yuga cycle, because it says as the yuga descends, you lose consciousness and the ability to think and
Yes.
interact energetically. But when you come through the yuga and come out the other side, then you start gaining the ability to interact consciously and so forth.
Yes. Because it's just like, okay, and I did this on one of my community posts where I showed the hopscotch board, right?
Hmm.
So you've got one leg, one leg, one leg, two legs. There's a split. One leg, two legs. There's another split. You get to the top, you turn around and you come back, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of the same thing. That's its own ugula cycle going down and back. That's the same thing that we're going through. Now, I see, and this is the part that kills me. Is yes, there are definite cycles that have taken place in this. All they are is loops. They're time loops. That's all they are. And it's so funny you brought that up, that Live Die Repeat, because I finally watched that movie just 2 nights ago. And what I found so funny about that is because he's on a mission, right? They got to go find this orb. So any little thing that comes along the way that distracts him, oh, time to put a bullet in the head, so we can go back to the beginning, right? He
Yep.
gets he gets a little broken leg. Normally, no big deal. Throw it in a cast 6 weeks, you're ready to go. No, he's on a mission. He's got to get this done quick. So, yeah, you got to die right here. Sorry.
But it kind of made sense too, in the sense that anything that diverts you from where you're supposed to be
Yes.
creates a reset.
Yes. Now, I don't
You know,
think it's that drastic, and that was some serious symbology being played out in as far as the alien blood
mm,
being in his system, right?
yeah,
There's something to that. So like we talk about, there's something to all these movies. In fact, that's probably the best way, or one of the best ways, right, to show a reset. That's why they call it the Great Awakening, is because it's not that people all over the earth are waking up to da 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 da. Yeah, they are, but that isn't the Great Awakening. Is going to be the reset
yeah. Well, the other
when
problem that we have too.
when we open our eyes on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have too, and I have talked about this, but I want to bring it up again. It's perspective, folks. This whole show is going to be perspective. So esoteric
Yes.
perspective, but perspective. We have so many people who are already planning for Christmas and New Year's, right?
Yes.
And we still have people who are dwelling on Thanksgiving
Yep.
and last summer and their vacation that they took last spring. Uh, so they're spending all their time yesterday and tomorrow,
Yep.
and that creates a whole different perspective because they cannot experience now.
No.
That's if I could ever just snap my finger and change one thing, I would change that whole concept. Yesterday, and I hate to use the Alcoholics Anonymous thing, but it's actually a good idea. You know, yesterday is gone. Fix the
Yep.
things that you can, right?
Yep.
Tomorrow's never going to get here. So all you have is today. Live
Yep.
today. The most evil thing that you can do to these people, folks, there's a reason why I always talk about inversions in my other podcasts. The most evil thing that you can do to these people, now remember, they've inverted it.
Yep.
So the most evil thing that you can do to these people is to live.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you have to live today. And,
Yeah.
back to the old adage, there's no guarantee that you're going to have tomorrow.
No. In fact, again, some more synchronicities. We were Maverick and I talking that exact same phrase just before I got a hold of you to do this. I mean,
Well, and
because
the devil's in the
because well, yeah, well, and I said this on your last podcast. If you take the word lived and spell it
Mhm.
backwards, you get devil. So if you want to be a devil to the system, just and see,
live.
and that's part of the whole. Okay, so let's go to perspectives, right? Because this is something else that came up. Because ever since I was a young man, I have always felt that I am here for the women. Okay. I don't and I can't explain that. Just that's just
Mhm.
something that I've known. Now how that played out is it kind of worked out that way. But on the bigger scheme of things, looking back and the knowledge that we gain and yada yada yada, there was a lot of truth to that too. If we're here for the earth, so to speak, the greatest female in the picture of all, right? So
Yes.
there's something to be said about that. But you know, okay, so my life growing up, I was what we would call a gearhead. And you and I touched base on this a little bit with Porsches and Camaros and blah blah blah. But my circle was gearheads, right?
Mhm.
And just like in the AA meetings, the people that you associate with are going to be what you become 5 years down the road, so to speak, right? But it's also the people that you associate with at that time in the present that make you who you are at that time in the present, right? Because
Mhm.
that's all it's ever about is the time in the present. Just like we talk about having sex with people, oh, it can connect you. Well, we're already connected. So I'm not worried about strengthening my connections to other people. You just got to recognize the good ones from the bad ones, and you can still stay connected to the bad ones. You just got to learn how to handle it. But anyway, so my whole life was hot rods and quote unquote chasing women, right? And I never understood, like in the high school days, your buddies all talking about certain women or the women that they like, the ones they think are cute. You know how it is. Typical guy locker room crap, right? But what I found so funny about perspective, even in my high school days, is if you have a group of women that are out running around doing the exact same thing that the guys are doing, they're looking to hook up with guys, right? Um,
Mhm.
they become sluts
Oh yeah.
in the verbal terminology of things, right? I mean,
Saying loose women.
yeah, I memean and I've never really understood first of all the labeling process that we use, but in fact I used to tell my buddies that weren't we all just out cruising the strip this weekend looking to pick up women? Now whether we sleep with them, all that's irrelative. Everybody's out looking to make that connection, right? supposedly. So, and that's what I told them. So they're doing the same thing we're doing, just she got lucky and you didn't. So now she's a slut. I mean, because that's like your ultimate
That's really what
dagger
it's about.
based on perception, right?
Yeah,
And
that's really what
ego
it's about.
ultimately. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
you
But I
get.
caught on to that even as a kid.
Oh yeah, I mean, and the other thing too is you folks don't get mad at me, but if you gave me a choice of 72 virgins or 72 wild, crazy women, you know what I'm taking.
The wild, crazy ones. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
But it's just it's again perspective. Things have been in who has a sexual appetite. Very good. I've got a friend that she has a very high libido, and if her libido is answered, she functions fantastically. And she's not necessarily what do they call that? Where they got to have. She's not
Nymphomaniac.
necessarily a nymphomaniac, but she does function a lot better when she's well sexed.
Right.
And so she does what she does. She has a circle of friends that take care of that itch, so to speak,
Right.
and she's a high functioning. Um, so is it wrong of her to take care of those physiological needs that help her function better? Hell no.
No.
And anybody who would say something crude or rude about her would probably get knocked out by all the people that know her
Yeah.
because she's been that way since we were in our
Well,
teen.
and you don't know her intent. See, okay, so in one of the podcasts we talked about the lack that people feel inside, and it's basically the connection to the others around us, right? And that includes everything: the connection to the forest, the connection to the sky, the earth. That's why grounding, right? We talk about grounding and barefoot. That is our connection to the earth. Um, so that missing connection that we have with others, see, and this is the part that's easily manipulated, if you will, right? Because everybody's looking for it. It's just how you're programmed to look for it and how to act once you found it. You
Hmm.
see, you see what I'm saying? Because in the last podcast, we even talked about people view let's go from the guy perspective, right? So you've got the guy locker room talk, they're wowing and wooing over different women. And let's say, happen chance this guy hooks up with that gal, right? Um, so you got to understand there's a certain thing that bring those people together in the first place, right? There's going to be
Yes.
similar energies involved, otherwise they would never have been there. So
Yep.
now, from that point on, though, typically what you're programmed to believe through TV and every other construct out there is that woman or that guy, depending on if you're the female here, is now part of your worldly possessions, like a car, a home, da 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 da
Yeah.
da da da. Because again, we've talked about this. We are the asset, not the tool, right? But we've been turned
That's it.
into tools. Okay, so most people, instead of looking at that person as an asset now in their life, like they should, they look at them as a tool or a
Yeah.
possession, just like any other thing. And so, though, and the bad thing about it is because of that basic programming that's put into people, those two people could have the best hearts in the sun, right? But if they're still acting on that premise, how far are those people really going to get in life if there's genuine love involved? Well, there can't be if one's being used as a tool. But that's my
Mhm.
whole point. It's what is genuine love? What is intimacy? You and I were talking. You could spend hours, right? You were talking, doing this, but nothing more than like your foot resting underneath your wife's butt, right? Now,
Yep.
other than just that physical connection right there, you're not interacting with her in any way, shape, form. You're not even talking to her. She's doing her
Completely.
thing over. Yeah, and see, a lot of people can't even comprehend being in the same room with somebody and they're being silenced because it's part of that programming of being fed some kind of constant stimulation, and usually it's in the form of a justification or gratification or you know how the
Television.
programming is. Yeah, tell it, whatever. Yeah, it's whatever the programming is, right? So this.
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
What's that?
I
I
was going
didn't
to
catch
say,
that bit.
the other problem that you have is people will go home at night. They will sit on the same couch right beside each other and turn the TV on, and there's zero intimacy between the two of them.
Yeah, zero, none. But they'll go to
So
work the next day and they'll talk about how they spent the evening with their loved one.
mm-hmm. Which
You
they
see,
did
and which is true, they did, but were they in the present? Were they truly with their loved one in the present, or were they just hanging
in
out?
the same
Did
same physical space.
yeah, I mean, and people, and I'm not trying to be cold and callous when I say this, okay? Because there again, it's going to depend on your definition of love and intimacy. But when you're in that situation where you just plop down on a couch and you're sitting next to somebody and there's no interaction and you're both just staring at the tube, you could quite easily exchange one of those people for somebody else and it would not make a difference.
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
people
And
don't look at it that way because they have that inner comfort, right, of that person sitting right next to them. So why does that comfort you, though?
but the other side of that is oh well, we watched TV for a couple hours and we had sex and went to bed. Well, that still doesn't indicate any intimacy.
No.
That's it depends on your perspective and what you're putting in and what you're taking out.
Because quite honestly, let's go back to just you and I, right? Okay, and we talked about this at the top of the show. If you can go to work and talk about what you did with your partner the night before, you weren't being intimate.
No.
Because we've already said there are conversations that Raven and I have had together that we can't share on a podcast because that
Oh,
was intimate. So think about that one. If you can go to work and say all this stuff that you did with your spouse the night before, it wasn't that intimate of an evening. I'm just
no.
saying. And they don't have to occur every single day of the week. It is what it is. There's life, there's kids, whatever everybody has in their world going on that serves as the big distraction, but that's kind of what it is too. It's a distraction to take people out of the present, right? Just like
Oh, yeah.
Christmas, you talked about that. How many people are gearing up and looking forward to Christmas right
Yep. And they're not
now?
even here today. And I
No,
think
they're
that's
sick.
I've emphasized this a couple of times as we've talked. Perspective. I am now. That is what I am. It doesn't matter if I'm pushing a broom, if I'm running a machine, if I'm cleaning a window, if I'm standing in a hallway. I am now. But
Yeah,
if someone else is already December 25th or January 1st or April 28th when they go on their vacation to Hawaii, if they're already there, they're not here with me.
right. And see, and even in the what we call the esoteric world, right?
Hmm.
Even that's been broken up and subdivided and
Awful
fractalized
with it.
because there are programs out there, right, in the esoteric world that'll teach you to this is how you manifest, right? You visualize and then you just act like you already have it, right?
Hmm.
That's part of. So
Well, I did that. I
that's
told you that before we started recording. I needed about 2 dozen rubber bands. And are you going to buy them? Nah,
no.
they'll happen. I'll happen across them. And damned if I go to work yesterday and I got 25 rubber bands just
Yeah.
laying on the floor.
Yeah, and but it didn't involve you going on for days acting like you already had your 25 rubber bands. And how does that make you feel? And you know how some of those esoteric circles are.
I just knew that they would turn up because I needed them. It's that way with everyone.
Excuse me. Exactly. So this whole bit of just acting like everything's hunky dory, and I mean that will serve a purpose to an end. That's where you get the old expression "fake it till you make it," right? um because you can. Okay,
You can't.
so and we've discussed this before in a podcast about how happiness, even happiness, the basic root, right, is a choice. You can either choose to wake up happy every day, find a reason to wake up happy every day, be thankful for those reasons to be, or you can just wake up pissed at the world because you're lack, right?
Yep.
And if you're one of those people that wake up, because this all goes back to perspective again, too, right? If you're one of those people that choose to wake up grumpy and blame the whole world for what's going on in your life right now, you're going to have a lot of company in that corner.
Oh yes.
You can
And
go anywhere
sympathy.
you want. Yeah, and
And
sympathy and all the boo-hoos, and if that's what you want in your life, you can find it. Me, I'm a happy person when I wake up. I have lots of reasons to be happy. A lot of people wouldn't look at my life and be happy, but their perspective, right, is of such a way that they can't even conceive those things. So
well,
perspective, well, because perspective is in that's what, and this is ultimately the point I was trying to make. Perspective goes into every single conscious is the key word too, decision that we make every single day is based on a platform of a certain perspective.
well, somebody's having a bad day and they snub you. If you dwell on that snub and make that the basis for your next interaction, then you've done the wrong thing, not the other person.
Exactly.
And folks don't even get that aspect of it. Um,
Yeah, because
it's
it takes because quite honestly, let me expand on that just a little bit. Okay, so let's say for some reason, and I know this wouldn't happen, but this is a good thing. Let's say Raven snubs me. Um, the next time we contact, if I even bring it up, see, because that's not letting the past be in the past.
mhm.
And let's say whether it's a 24-hour period or a 24-week period, 24-day period, it doesn't matter. Whatever period that goes by from point A to point B, when you re-interact with that person scenario again, if you can still remember it and you've been holding it that whole time, well, that's on you.
Mhm.
You see what
It's
I
that thing
that
about
that
it's
yeah.
the thing
Go
you and
ahead.
me were talking about when we were texting. You're giving somebody else free space in your head in your life
There you go. Just
that
like that. Yep.
instead of just dealing with now. And it doesn't matter if you love me. It doesn't matter if I'm respected, admired, whatever. If I'm having an off day and something happens like that, and then you just dwell on it, then you're taking something completely innocuous. It could just be that I was heading someplace and had to get there,
Yeah.
and you're letting that feed negativity that whole time.
Yeah. Or it could, or just like you said a second ago, it could just be something you're having a bad day and got caught off guard, whatever. It's see, and this is the thing I tell about gratitude. If I can wake up every day and have certain basic needs met for me, like food, water, roof over my head, yada yada yada, the things that get me through life, so to speak. Um, then I'm grateful for it all because there are people who don't even have that. There's
You know,
people who live exactly like I do. We have very similar lifestyles, but they may be like an Iraqi vet and are trying to do it with one missing leg or two missing arms, or I'm so thankful for everything, all my fact, even life itself. I may not like waking up in this picture frame every day, but what's the alternative? Death, and I'll take life over death any given day of the week. You know.
and the other thing too, this frame is actually kind of entertaining if you stand back and watch it.
Yeah, yes, that again, some more synchronicities. That's exactly what I was telling Maverick. I said, there's a lot of things that I used to do in this world that I used to find a lot of joy in, right? And here lately, it's not so much. And I know that's for everybody. It's not just me, but
Yeah.
that's part of the point, though. Right there is uh, what does bring you joy now, because it's none of the things that so now, and it's not even joy, it's what I look forward to every day now is what weird thing is going to happen tomorrow in the world out there in the ant farm that I'm watching. What's going to happen tomorrow? You know what I'm saying?
It's like folks, I don't do a lot of the social sites and stuff like that. I really don't. So like For me, what happened today, I won't know about until tomorrow because I don't watch the news and all that crap. But I'll get up
Exactly.
tomorrow and I'll see on my YouTube feed, or I'll see emails or texts from people, and they'll be, "Did you see this?" And I'll look at it and I'll read the headline. I'm like, "Man, I just read that 2 weeks ago." And then when I tell
Mhm.
them that's the same headline that was up 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 10 years, um, they'll say, "I never even thought about that." Well, it's because they're worried about tomorrow, and they don't remember yesterday, unfortunately.
No,
And
no, and that's
I,
something else.
yeah,
You know, how many people have an actual mechanical working watch or clock?
exactly.
Because I would love to have a good mechanical clock right now and just let
German
it
made.
run, and yeah, and let it run and compare it to the actual time that we're being shown on all our digital stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, for me, it's like I've got two old fashioned compasses. One of them is military, and one of them, a friend of mine gave it to me. That was back when I was in Boy Scouts, of all things. Um,
Right.
and they do not sync up with the digital compasses at all.
Well, that's why I'm kind of wondering about the time, because we talk all the time about how the ebbs and flows of the eddies and the currents of time, because time does flow like a current. It's not
Just,
linear. We perceive it as linear, but it's not.
you know,
So,
give a
and
shout out.
huh?
I want to give a shout out while you brought it up. Sands of Time, Sands of Time. Mick Blankenship, great guy, great music, great song.
Mm, yes,
Um,
yes.
I try to do that for up and coming singer, and he's purely independent, y'all. No label, no nothing. So
Oh, right on.
anyway,
But
but
yeah,
anyway,
so as you go through these ebbs and flows, um, and you said it just in this podcast, your interaction with people changed your ebb and flow of energy within your own personal toroidal field.
yep,
Um,
yep, flowed.
and you probably, quite honestly, could have sat there and listened to normal radio and a normal video while you were talking to them. But as soon as you're on your lonesome, like an hour later, you probably had to
Hmm.
go back to listening to Metallica at 1.3. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm actually up to like 1.6 now, y'all.
but that's
Tell
that's I and you laugh, but I perfectly understand, because this is a question that I had for Maverick, because he was talking about his animals, and even like Maisie here.
hmm
Now, is she really that smart? Or because I know she listens to me. Okay,
Yeah.
and we talked about the whole bit with the raccoon. I've
hmm
been trying to verbally convince her not to keep killing raccoons, so now she doesn't, right? And she'll play them to death. She
Yeah.
still kills them, just it takes longer and she gets more playtime out of it. So it is what it is. But I also made the comment to her that I think I need to put her on a diet, because she just turned 5 years old this year. And anybody who's ever owned a Great Dane knows once they hit five, they gain about anywhere from 5 to 25 pounds, depending on if it's a male, female, whatever, and if they've been fixed or not. And
hmm
unfortunately, Maisie being a rescue, they're all fixed. So I told her, I said, you're starting to put on a couple little pounds there. We need to put you on a diet, get you running a little more. And dude, the very next day, she's running out in the field instead of just walking in the field.
hmm
And 2 nights that week, forewent dinner. Now, is
Wow.
that because I told her she needed a diet, or because there was also a night last week where I got up in the morning, had my morning shake, and it came to be dinner time, and I just wasn't hungry, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to snack real quick, see what happens later, kind of thing, right? So I toasted up an English muffin, I snacked on my English muffin, and that wound up being my dinner. That's all I needed,
Uh-huh.
and I think it's because of the energies either coming in, going out, depending on your perspective, right?
hmm
Um, so I was talking to Maverick about the same thing, and it's kind of the same thing because it doesn't matter where we're at. It's the same thing for everybody. Some people are eating more, some people are eating less. They're going through
Yes.
binges. Their animals are doing the same thing. So it's kind of nice being able to talk to people like you and Maverick, let's say, that pay attention to their animals, pay attention to their world, and can see these things, right? So we can all compare notes, so to speak.
Well, for me,
Because
I noticed that.
go ahead.
I notice to show a perspective. I noticed on the days where I have to spend a lot of time interacting with people, I'm hungry. On
Yes.
days where I am pretty much just turned loose and have hardly any interaction, I eat hardly anything.
Yes, yes, and see, and I've noticed, well, and I've noticed the same thing, and this may or may not be an explanation for that. Okay, so if you're, okay, so like me, you spend all your time elsewhere. You may be physically at your job, and you may be present at your job, but you're only 100% present, right, when you're interacting with those other people. The rest of the
Yep.
time, you're doing your job
Doing
off
other
of.
things.
Exactly. So you're more connected to the inflow of energy at that point. We both are. So when you interact, like I said, when it's not that we're no longer drawing people to us, it's just that because you probably could have went through that same scenario with people and not interacted with them at all, depending on what the circumstances were. You may had to have interacted with them. But my point is, you know, in the same situation, you put that number of people in a hallway and you just stay to you and waltz through the hallway. That's where you get, they don't even see me, right? You just walk right
Amen.
through and they don't even know you're, because you're still keeping all your energy onto you. Now, once you stop and you start interacting, now you're sharing that energy with that individual, and their realm is of a lower energy. So they're actually sucking energy out of you while you're interacting with them.
You know, the interesting thing is for years and years, I've always said I can walk through a crowd and never be seen,
Yes.
and
That's how
I've
you
been
do
able
it.
to do. But now, also that brings up, you know, like I'm in the grocery store shopping, and all of a sudden I need to find something, so I walk up to one of the clerks, and all of a sudden they jump out of their skin because where did you come from? Well,
Exactly. I just materialized it. Well, see, and that now it's not okay. And I'm so glad that I took the time and watched that movie, Live, Die, and Repeat. Okay, because that's the same kind of thing that happens. Like, okay, so he gets a bullet to the head and he wakes right back up, sleeping on the same luggage that he was sleeping on before, right? Um, and it's not that we're resetting the day, but when you're in one energetic realm and you pull off to the curb, right, and go talk to the clerk, you're now just appearing just like that into her energetic realm. And she
mhm.
probably didn't see you come right up. You were probably, even though you were there, and the person next to her may have saw you, maybe, let's say, but in her little energetic world where she was focusing, because you know energy flows where our focus goes, right? Or isn't
Yes.
that the old saying or something like that?
Yep.
So her focus was right here. Your focus is everywhere. You're spread out in the ether. So yeah, you just kind of like materialized right into her energy world and scared the
And
piss out of her.
I do it. I do it to people all the time, folks, and I don't do it on purpose, but I have my own space, and when I'm doing something, I'm doing it. And if I
Yeah.
need to interact with somebody, you know, 9 times out of 10, I'll scare the bejesus out of them. Because where did you come from? I didn't even see you or hear you. Well, I've been here the whole time.
And that is, dude, and that is so funny because okay, so Maisie, my Great Dane, we were just talking about her. She goes everywhere with me except to work, right? I can take her to Walmart, I can take her to the dollar store.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as Great Danes go, she's not a huge dog.
Hmm.
Okay, I've had bigger Great Danes. Great Danes get very big, as a matter of fact.
Oh
She's
yeah.
what? Maybe she's of the 165 pound variety. So I mean, she's still a big dog. Even a little Great Dane is a big dog.
Hmm.
But there have been times where I can walk through like the dollar store, just the Walmart, be indoors with her, and her and I walk up on people, and the same kind of thing happens. And I have to laugh because you know it's one thing for me. right? Or we see this all the time where we startle people that way, where we're jumping in and out of their own personal windows. But Maisie's a big dog to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you not see her coming from half an aisle away? She takes up half the freaking aisle. I mean, she's not that big, but I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think our cloak of invisibility can even extend around our animals at times,
I used to do it with horses when I was guiding.
right?
I'd come up over. I hate to use the Western, y'all, but I'd come up over a draw, and I'd see somebody down there, and generally that would be another guide or a hunting group. So you just ride
Right?
in, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you and the horse are there, and they're like, "Whoa, shit!" Um, I think
And see, and to me, those see now, okay, and not to interrupt, but see, those people right there to me are the ones that are not present in their environment. Just like the lady you spook, she's too focused on her job or whatever's got her attention, and she's not paying attention to the environment around her. She's not present.
Well, the other day I had to go into an office and talk to somebody, and I stood at the door was open. They were at their desk, and they were not really doing much. I mean, reading a paper. So I'm the courtesy person. I'll let them finish whatever they're doing. They put the paper down and just kind of sit there for a minute, and it, I didn't focus on them because that's rude. So when I did focus on them, then they started and looked at me. When did you come in? Um, I think a lot of it has to do with your perspective. If you reach
Hmm.
out, then they're aware of you.
Yes. Well, see, I
Um,
was just going to add too, because I
see,
know there's people out there thinking right now, well, if you say that you're in a state and you're not always there, how can you be present? And that's a very hard one to explain. I am there. Okay, so the eyes are the windows to the soul. We talk
hmm
about this all the time. And when you walk into a room, okay, not only does your energy affect the room, but your eyes will see every single detail in that room. Whether you can recall it or not is up to you. Okay, that's how people have all this instant recall for every day of their life. On some
hmm
cases, you've heard of those people, right? Now, I
yep,
don't know what part of the brain or whatever that they got to access to do that, but the point is you have to understand that if one person has the ability to do this, it's potentially in all of us, right?
yeah.
That's the first thing. This is, we don't, Raven and I don't perform card tricks or I don't, I just, I can only try to be as truthful because I know how to keep my karma good. So you'll never hear a lie come out of my mouth, the best of my knowledge. It just is what it is. I just see everything energetically, right?
Yeah.
So karma is a very real thing. Our thoughts are a very real thing. All of it is a very real thing. And that's where being present. So my eyes, if I walk into a room, let's say at my job, okay, so yes, I'm physically there and my eyes are taking in everything inside the room. So at that brief moment in time when I first walk into the room, I'm probably more present than once I go into work, because once you start the work aspect of your job, that's kind of like muscle memory, right? So um you and just like we talk about your spiritual muscle or what your esoteric muscle, whatever label you want to throw on it,
Yeah.
the more you work with that muscle, the more it doesn't have to be 100% present in order for you to move the physical muscle called your body, because the energy is invisible. It's the driving force. I've said this 100 times. The body doesn't die and then we leave the body. We leave the body and then the body dies, is my opinion.
It's kind of like for very simple folks. This is about as simplistic as I can get. You're sitting at your house and you're making a cup of coffee. You're putting some sugar in your coffee cup, stirring it, and all of a sudden you're thinking, I'm trying to. Good Lord, it just went out of my head. Um, I'm trying to think of an opening line for a song. So you're sitting there and you're stirring your sugar, and all of a sudden in your head you hear So you think you can tell? The song's not playing, and you're
Right?
right there physically present. You're physically present, stirring that cup of coffee, but your head is wherever you heard that song the last time,
Yep.
or where you heard
Exactly.
the song the first time. You could have been driving down the road in your
Hmm.
muscle car the first time you heard that song, or you could have
Yep.
been sitting at home and heard it on the AM radio or whatever. You're
And
physically
that's
present.
and that's and that's what a and that's what a flashback is. A flashback is an energetic thing. A it's not a physical transporting your body to a different. It's an energetic attachment that you still have to that time
Yeah,
that you brief, briefly just jump back to and revisited for a split second. Same thing happens in your dreams and all that stuff. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, and for me, I'm trying to explain. Like I'm at work. Okay, I'm physically present. The work is all getting done, but I'm thinking about a podcast. I'm wondering how Scott's doing. I'm thinking, am I going to send him an ornery picture and make him bust out laughing? Um,
Right.
uh, how's Sean up in Michigan doing with all the? My brain does not have to be. I personally do not have to be where my body is doing the work, other than
No.
opening a door. And not even you get so mechanical, and I hate to use that term, you all. You get so autonomous at things that you do
Hmm.
that you can do those things consciously and with awareness, and still be 500, 200, 2,000 miles away.
Yep. And
I
and
mean,
and
right?
what I've discovered is, okay, so we have talked before in a different podcast about this thing called resistance, right?
Hmm.
So I have discovered that, okay, so when we talk about Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over again, even like right now, you just brought it up, right? So one of the ways to defeat resistance is don't get caught into a daily routine. Don't always wake up at the same time of day. Don't always, set your clock 20 minutes early one day and get up early, get a fresher start, go to bed later one night, stay up later one night. When we discuss things like fasting, right?
Hmm.
Everybody thinks that's food, and
But
fasting from food based on what you're eating and what you're putting in your body, yeah, that can be a very good thing. But you can fast from anything. You can fast from technology. You can fast from the inside of a house and go camping for however many days you want to fast. You can fast from
being
anything you
hot, being
currently.
cold.
Yeah, you can fast from, and that's all it is. It's a form of fasting. And just like fasting, okay, so when you if they'll even tell you this, when you fast from food, you'll help reset your internal biological immune system, right? You can help reset it. You can help reset a lot of things from fasting from
Good
food.
example, the cold here. The cold here. A lot of people say, "How can you stand to be out in the cold?" I said, "Because I do it," and they
Yeah.
completely do not
Yeah.
understand that. Like right now,
Mm-mm.
y'all, I have sitting outside in this chill weather. It's about 22, 26 degrees. I've been sitting out here since Scott and I started talking an hour before we started recording. Am I chilly? Am I chilly? Yes. Are my fingertips a little bit cold? Yes. However, by coming out here into the cold and getting out of the heat, it allows my body to reset physically to be tolerant of the cold.
Yeah.
It's just
It
like when it's hot
resets you from
outside.
the heat. Yeah. Yeah.
When it's hot
Because
outside,
your
don't sit
body
in the air.
your body will adjust. That's why we always say it only takes 2 weeks to form a new habit. And
Hmm.
see, and that's what we're calling it too, a new habit, right? I don't like having any kind of habits per se, especially when it involves my time, because I try to be deceptive, if you will, to the matrix as to where I'm going to be at any given time. If the matrix know it can find me at the lake every single day at this spot at 5 o'clock, it may have something waiting for me down there one day that I may not expect. So I don't always walk the same places or the same time, or I try not to do anything. The only thing that was consistent, that is consistent in my life these days, is any job I may have, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but
The rest,
even
the,
even that
Go
can
ahead.
be changed. Like me, you know, I vacuum a lot, y'all, because of the space that I have to take care of. But
Right.
you know, you can vacuum left to right, you can vacuum right to left, you can vacuum sideways.
Up and down, back and forth. Yep. Yep. Make a game of it.
So
You got to make a game of life. It's because again, it's a matter of perspective, right?
you
Yeah,
start with one
life
end of the carpet and
sucks
go
at
to
times. Yeah.
you know, and I change my routine up so that it doesn't become it's a habit. I know what I'm doing when I get to that point.
Yes.
But I may do A to Z tonight and then Z to A next week.
Tomorrow. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
And what that
Because
does is you
you're still getting the same job done. You're just mixing up the seeing that, and even that you're just mixing up your own routine within your routine, right?
but it keeps you present.
Yeah, it does. And
Uh,
and what I've noticed, quite honestly, it helps reduce in uh resistance. We'll just keep calling it that. We'll just call it resistance.
well, you know,
Now,
and
is that part of my personal walk? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because it's real easy to assimilate everybody into our own personal walk, right? And we know it's not that easy. So,
you know, and folks, I don't like to bring up the old shows, but if you haven't seen heard it, I did a show a while back called Residue and Residuals,
yep,
and that's another point of perspective. Um, because a lot of times what we do is we get locked into what we see and you know I used to have folks I have a very wide ranging of things. I brought up a term which is starting to take hold finally,
hmm,
maybe 10 years ago, but I brought this term up years ago and it's called comfortable misery. People would rather be comfortable in the misery that they know than take a chance of being happy or breaking the cycle that they're in,
yes,
because they know the cycle that they're in and it's comfortable even though it's miserable, and you can't stay there. If you stay there, then you're not being evil to those that want you to be. You're not living.
exactly, exactly. No, that's dude. That is very true. That's there's an old expression, old. I mean, some of these are old. Feel your way through it, right? And we've
Hmm.
even talked about this on the podcast about how we had to be asleep to like feel our way through life, right? Because again, feelings and emotions are the same thing as thoughts and things, right?
Yeah,
Um, um, it just is what it is. That's a hard one to because then you get into how do you explain a feeling without you know uh, using an adjective that's another feeling. You really can't. Feelings are their own little thing, just like perspective is, just like
yeah.
opinions are. Everything is its own little thing, isolated onto the individual that has that in their system, so to speak.
Try to describe
So,
hot.
pardon?
Try to describe hot.
There you go. Exactly.
You know, for example,
Yeah.
you know,
And
we
for
know what
you,
cold feels
and
like. Try
well,
to describe.
well, yeah, and for everybody, it's going to be different too. Like, you're sitting there describing the cold, um, but I could go sit right alongside you probably, and I'm still going to experience the cold just a little bit different than you because individual perspective, right? So
It.
we'll
And
we'll have similar symptoms.
I've tried to emphasize that through all my podcasts. Everybody is coming at this situation from a different history. So you're
Yes,
going to have a different perspective. And I have always encouraged people, hey, send me an email. Let me know what you think, because what is your perspective? Because your perspective is yours, not mine, and it might
yep.
help me see things in a different way.
Uh,
And that is important, to give me your perspective is to be intimate with me for a moment.
there
Just
you
like my
go. Exactly.
just like my podcast, even though I don't share the most intimate details of my life, which would probably shock the hell out of most of you. Um, if you want some of them, you can go to my comedy. But
Right.
the thing about it is these podcasts are an intimate look into my thought and my perspective. But if you share your perspective, you are going to share something intimate with somebody.
Uh-huh.
And I'm telling you, the connections are huge. People do not understand that an email can connect you up just as quickly. You know, a very good example is my friend Rob, RK, up there in Washington. I have never met him. I've talked to him on the phone a couple of times, and I consider him a lifelong friend,
Right.
because of a true intimacy. And
Right.
it,
And that's what we were talking about even in the last podcast. How long have you and I known each other? 6, 8
yeah,
months?
yeah,
You know,
and not
and
understand
you're
how.
probably one of the most intimate people I am with on the planet, and you're 1,200 miles away.
People do not understand how it works. That little thing. I saw a show the other day, and it said, you know, you have to give a little bit of yourself if you want to get a little bit back.
Yes, yes.
Once you create that cycle, then you have someone else that you're connected to
Hmm.
intimately, and there's the perspective, brother. And folks, I have got to go, but we have managed to get you a show and to
Yeah,
hopefully
that
help
went
give
quick.
you some perspective from an esoteric.
Exactly, because that's what it all was perspective. Because just
Brother, I
remember,
appreciate you.
it could always be worse. Just remember, and I know sometimes that's a hard thing to focus on when you're knee deep in your own
Mess, yeah.
minutia. Yeah. Um, but like I said, fake it till you make it, right? So just make the conscious decision to be happy for the next 2 weeks and see how it changes, regardless of what you're in. It'll change your perspective. Trust me. Because again, where your attention goes, the energy flows. So if you're constantly just saying, "I live in a good world," even though the outside world sucks, I know this, but I make the conscious decision every day and every night and
That
during
my
the
space
course
is
of the
not going to
day.
be. My space is not going to be
Yeah,
that way.
just to be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyhow,
Brother, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. I always love chatting with you, and it's good to hear your voice always, man. I love it. Mahe and
Folks,
I, everybody.
Mahe and I'm going to stop the recording.